something that I think many a person struggle with, which is in part this idea of focusing on the thing in front of you versus getting too distracted with other opportunities. And I wanted to talk to you about this idea of focus.
Sure.
And how important you think it is for mastery.
Yeah.
I meet so many young people who will say to me, oh, I'm doing this little crypto thing here, and I've got this hair business here, and I've got this other thing here. What would you say to those people that are trying to become a master in this world as it relates to focus?
It's funny because I'm helping the son of an old friend of mine who's got that problem, and he's incredibly successful. I hope he's not listening to this. He's 20 years old. He's very wealthy. He's done amazing things. But he's one of those people who spread himself out to all these different things. And I can't find a through line, what connects them all, except making money and having connections and stuff. And it's very alluring in this world, particularly, where there's so many possibilities where you can get on the internet, you can learn this, that, the other people are doing these things. You can get into crypto, you can, start your own business here. You can get into the health and fitness world. You can, and then later on try to figure out how to connect them all. But life doesn't work like that. That's not how the brain functions. That's not what we were meant for, because it doesn't start from you. The whole thing has to start from you. It can't start from the world. It can't start from what other people are doing. It can't start from what's sexy. It has to come from within. If it doesn't come from within, then you're going to be floundering for years and years and years. And so what I've done with this young person, whose name I won't mention, but I love dearly, is what is it that really is in your heart? What is it that you really, really love? How can we connect this crypto with this media business that you're starting, with the sports world that you're starting, with this fitness thing? What connects them all, And to me, I was getting the sense, we haven't solved it yet, but he's kind of excited by celebrities and by that world. And that's fine. I think there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm saying, well, maybe what connects all this is the film business, right? Because the film business is pretty wide-ranging. To be a producer, to raise money, you're dealing with all kinds of different people. You're networking. You're meeting starlets. It's a glamorous life, but it's focused, okay? So, when you focus on something, the world just kind of opens up, but you have to be focusing on the right thing. So if you were meant to be a writer and then you decide because you want money to go into law school and then you focus very deeply on law school, what will happen is for a year or two, you'll be able to skid by, but then the wheels will start going slower and slower because you're not interested in it. You're not connected to it. You get bored and your focus will start falling to pieces. But if it's something you love, you can focus on that for 7, 8, 10, 12 years and never get bored.
From observing a certain family member of mine do a very similar thing, part of it as well is that when she would start one pursuit, starting X business, it would get hard, as it always does. And when you look over at the person across the road, they seem to be having a much easier life with their thing, or with their crypto, or with their whatever.
Yeah.
And they tell you the story of how much money they've made and how easy it was, whatever. So you get tempted into believing that the grass is greener, you pursue that. So now you're doing two things. Now your first thing starts to suffer.
Yeah.
And I think especially in the early season of life, when you don't have Elon Musk resources, much of the game is focusing enough on one thing to build those resources so that you have the chance of being able to do more than one thing or spreading your bets a bit more. But in that first season, when you're in resource accumulation phase, I think my early investors in my company, I remember one day emailing my first investor, who's a very successful man, and saying, I've got an idea. And it was an idea other than the one he'd invested in. And I remember the email, I was 18 years old, and he hit me so hard on that email. He was like, if you don't focus on one thing, you will never, ever be
you were
successful.
the one that was interested in this other thing.
I was trying to...
He was the one,
Yeah, so my investor, he was a very successful man, and I emailed him this other idea, which I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
And he sent me this email back, which was like being hit by a whip. And he was like, if you don't focus on one thing now, you will never be successful. Because also you rob yourself, as you said, of the chance of accumulating deep skills.
Yeah. Yes, it is. I remember this is something that wise people know. And if you're young, if you have like a mentor like you did, who could tell you the truth, the ropes as they are. It will help save you years of misery. I remember when we were at American Apparel, it was the year 2007. The company was just about to go public. I was about to be put on the board of directors, and this man came to me who was like your investor, and he said, Robert, just make sure that Dove's doesn't mindlessly expand. Make the brand focused. Have it focused on one thing, and then he will be successful. At the time, I thought that was interesting, but I didn't really have the guts to explain that to Dove. But there are people out there who understand the truth of this. But the other thing about envy, like you say, you see your other friend doing crypto and they're having so much fun and making so much money. I tell you, it's bullshit. They're not having as much fun as you think, right? People create a front on Instagram or TikTok or wherever where life seems so glorious, but they're never having as much fun as you might imagine. In my book, Laws of Human Nature, I talk about Aristotle Onassis, who in the 60s was the wealthiest man in the world. He was married to John F. Kennedy's widow, Jacqueline Kennedy, Jacqueline Onassis. Who could be happier than that? He had yachts, etc. He was the most unhappiest, miserable person in the world, as Jacqueline Kennedy explained in her autobiography. He was such a mean-spirited, unhappy person. Yet everybody envied him because he had this beautiful wife and all that money. The people you envy are not doing nearly as well as you think, so don't let that influence your decisions in life.
I've never forgotten a certain Johnny Ive clip that I watched many, many years ago. I think must have been 5 years ago now, where he talks about working with Steve Jobs. And this is what he says in the clip, and I've never forgotten it. Never forgotten it.
This sounds really simplistic, but it still shocks me how few people actually practice this. And it's a struggle to practice. But is this issue of focus. Steve was the most remarkably focused person I've ever met in my life. And the thing with focus is it's not sort of like this thing you aspire to or you decide on Monday, you know what, I'm going to be focused. It is every minute, why are we talking about this? This is what we're working on. You can achieve so much when you truly focus. And one of the things that Steve would say, because I think he was concerned that I wasn't, he would say, how many things have you said no to? And I would, honestly, I would have these sacrificial things, because I wanted to be very honest about it, and so I say, oh, I said no to this, and no to that. And he knew that I wasn't vaguely interested in doing those things anyway. So there was no real sacrifice. What focus means is saying no to something that you, with every bone in your body, you think is a phenomenal idea, and you wake up thinking about it, but you say no to it because you're focusing on something else.
Yeah, amen. That's the church of focus. I agree with completely. I mean, I hate using my own examples because I'm a rara avis, I'm a rare bird. But, I have this book that I'm writing, okay? And it's on a very specific subject. And I get distractions all the time. People want, I can do this speaking engagement in India where I've never been before, or Egypt, kind of thing, or get involved in this television project. And I'm actually never really seduced by it because I just love writing. But where it really comes down to is I'm writing this book and it's been going really not well. It's because I'm not focused on the actual thing I'm trying to say. So you can bring that level of focus down to the finest point of your business or your writing or whatever. What is it you're trying to say? What is it you're trying to accomplish? What is your brand really about? Get into the nitty-gritty, get into the little fine grains of sand and know what that is. So every time I'm writing my chapter and I start writing about something that's not directly relevant to what it's about and what the reader is going to be interested in, I'm making a mistake. And I make the mistake for several weeks and then I realize it and I pull back. So that level of focus has to have a lot of energy behind it because you're so in love with what you're doing that when you deviate from it, this little radar inside of your brain goes, you're off, you got to get back to it, right? And it's painful, but when you do get back to it and when things do click, it's incredibly pleasurable. So the focus for young people that seems so painful, God damn it, everyone else is having so much fun and I'm having to learn this. Just keep telling yourself that you're doing something that your brain is going to reward you with several years down the line. So that friend of yours that seems to be having so much fun, in 3 years, they're going to be sliding down the ladder, working at some crap job, whereas you're going to be rising up. So just keep your mind on the larger issue there, and know that working with what your brain works well with will pay incredible rewards down the line.
When they talk about compounding returns in life, they always say that it's slow, then it's fast. And even this podcast, if you look at the graph of this podcast, for the first 3 years of me recording in my cupboard on Sunday nights alone, completely flat. No one's listening. And then by maybe I'd say year 4 or year 5, it goes straight up.
Yeah.
And that's a consequence of those first 3 years were acquiring skills, understanding what people liked and why they liked listening to the show, and actually getting better as a talker, a speaker, an interviewer, etc. And what most people miss is they miss that internship of the slow, lonely, unrewarding couple of years because they lose focus. No one's clapping, no downloads. I've never seen another route. I've never seen another path there. I've never seen the overnight success.
Well, I mean, I know I can name 5 other podcasters who have the same story as you who've told me that. Lewis Howes, Chris Williamson, Jay Shetty, they all have the same story. For several years, nothing. Crickets. And I knew these people when they were just starting out. And then that happens. I remember when I was working with 50 Cent on the book, The 50th Law, people look at rap stars and they go, wow, the glamour, the fun, the excitement, the sexiness, the lifestyle. But he said, I knew him because I was with him. Nobody worked harder than 50. He was incredibly disciplined and incredibly focused. And when he made it in the music business, it took incredible years of difficulty, hardship, and failure. But nobody ever sees that. They only see him in concert and all the glamour and all the fun. They never focus on the years of grit and near failure. He got shot, he nearly died. His record label dropped him. He had to work his way back up into the music industry from the very bottom until Eminem finally noticed him. But we don't see that in these celebrities, all the grit and the hard work that took them to get there. We just see the success and we get seduced by the success.
I've heard you reference before Howard Gardner's Frames of Mind, Theory of Multiple Intelligences book. And in that book, it says that there are 5 types of intelligences: logical intelligence, linguistical intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, spatial intelligence, and bodily intelligence. And it defines them quite differently. Logical is the ability to reason and solve problems and think in abstract terms like scientists and mathematicians. Linguistical intelligence is things like writers, lawyers, and poets. You're one of those writers. Interpersonal intelligence are leaders, psychologists, and teachers. Spatial intelligence are architects, artists, and pilots. And lastly, bodily intelligence is athletes, dancers, and surgeons. How important is it to know your form of intelligence to be successful in life?
So figuring out what that is incredibly important. And the reason why I like this book so much is we tend to think of intelligence as intellectual, as, computer programming or mathematics or whatever it is, having a PhD in this field. But that's not intelligence. Intelligence is also bodily intelligence. Like somebody like Kobe Bryant in basketball is as intelligent as Albert Einstein, but in a different way. So you have a parent who's always geared towards, going to the best school and being an intellectual giant, and their child wants to do ballet or sports or something, and you kind of look down on that and you say, no. You're setting your child up for misery. Recognize what one of these frames are for your child and press on it and let them go in that direction, because it's what they're naturally gearing towards. It's what's fun, right? So if for me, it was linguistic intelligence, words. Since I was a child, words bewitch me. I can't believe that we have words to name things and that there are these symbols with letters that have sounds. But a lemon isn't a lemon, it's just a word. And I was like 5 years old, what the hell can that be? That's so interesting, you know? And that you could take a word apart and spell other words with it. So I knew from very early on that it was words, 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 words. And I absolutely stink at one of these. Intelligence is mechanical intelligence, knowing how to build things. I'm terrible at that, which is very odd because my father was brilliant at that and he wasn't good at any of the others and I didn't inherit it. So that goes all, that kind of debunks genetics right there. But, so figuring out which one of those and leaning in it and making that the direction of your life is so, so important. So if your thing is interpersonal intelligence and you understand that, and yet you're not heading into a job in which you're social and around people, you're going to be so miserable. But if you know that what your thing is interpersonal intelligence, you've got like 100 different directions you can head into. That doesn't mean you have to only be a social worker. It just means you have to be a leader of people because you understand you like being around people, you like working with others, you're very empathetic. There could be 100 different kinds of jobs. Mm-hmm. But once you know that, it gives you a sense of direction. It's by far the most important step for people, and I always recommend people reading this book because it's very, very important.
Are we recording? 87% of people don't subscribe on the Clips channel.
Yeah.
Taking liberties. What? Just coming for free and then bouncing. What? 87%? 90% of people on the Clips channel don't subscribe.
That's what it says here.
So I've been doing all this for free. You've been consuming all these clips for free. Listen, we'll make a deal. I'm really going to make these clips amazing and you're in the Clips algorithm on our show. So can I ask a favor? Please, can you hit the subscribe button? If you've watched more than one before, how about that? If you've watched more than one, first one free, buy one, get one free. The second one, I'm going to have to ask you to subscribe. If this is the first time you've seen a clip on this channel, move along. You don't need to subscribe. But if you've seen one before, please do me a favor, help a guy out, hit the subscribe button. Thank you so much.